Today, ladies and gentlemen, we will be reviewing the new film, The Batman. Now, getting straight into it, the first thing I want to say is this superhero film isn't like other superhero films you might be used to. The reason is that this movie is a lot more of a depressing superhero film than a more sort of fun one. If you think of movies like Iron Man, Avengers, the whole MCU pretty much, Deadpool, well, a lot of it is making comedy and jokes, a lot of jokes. This Batman film is a lot more depressing. Robert Pattinson's Batman is a lot more of a depressed figure, a lot more of a sort of emo superhero, if you will. So straight away, you're thrown into this sort of depressive city of Gotham. It's always meant to be a shithole, but from other Batman depictions I've seen, it's never really as bad as it could be. But this Gotham is terrifying. Like literally, it's a shithole. It's shown all at night as well, so you see all of this at night. There's thugs running around with paint on their face, just causing havoc. It's consistently raining throughout the entire film. Like it's raining the entire time. I don't think there's a moment where it's not raining in this film. And the whole city actually just looks like crap. Like everything they show, it looks very depressing. There's graffiti all over the place, thugs running around. I mean, darkness everywhere. It's really a great depiction of Gotham and what I think Gotham should be. Now let's talk about some of the things I like about this movie. First and foremost, the casting is very good. Like a lot of people had their reservations about Robert Pattinson being Batman, probably because his most notable role ever was Twilight, and he's kind of known for playing soy boys, if you will, in every sort of franchise he's in. Whether it was Harry Potter, he played Cedric Diggory, who wasn't exactly a very masculine character. I haven't seen Twilight, but his main character in Twilight is one of the most sort of feminine films of all time, or at least it's got that reputation. So I think he's kind of overshadowed by that role wherever he goes, and a lot of people are doubting he would be a good Batman. But personally, I really liked it. I think he's done a pretty good job as Batman to display kind of that depressing feeling the movie kind of gives you. In terms of the other cast, I mean, I think everyone was cast pretty well. I don't think there was one character that was like, bro, that guy should not be here. Why didn't they get someone else? I think the Riddler, who's the main villain in this film, was well cast. I don't know if they've announced this character was in it, so if you don't want to know who it is, skip forward. I don't think it's a spoiler, but I think the Penguin was also cast very, very well. He's obviously not the main villain, he's just kind of in the film, but I think he was cast very well. For me, that was the best of all of them. I just think he was just amazing in that role. Also, this film is very like the superhero isn't overpowered, like he doesn't have plot armor. In a lot of superhero films, even if the superhero gets his ass kicked, that he's gonna win in the end. With this film, you never really have a feeling that Batman is ahead of the villain, like he's got the upper hand. Pretty much throughout the film, he's never really takes the upper hand or the advantage. And I think it's kind of more of what the movie set out to do was not make Batman in his complete form, if you will. It's kind of the introduction where he's still learning the ropes. You see him still struggling with some of his morals at times, even though he seems to take the moral high ground at times, which is one thing I don't like. My man is always moral high roading people, but when it comes to him, my man has no care of human life. If he kills someone, I guess it's fine, but if other people do it, it's wrong. So that's one of my gripes with the film. For sure, the villain in this film is excellent. Like I said, he always has the upper hand. It's like he planned the entire thing from start to finish. He's always in control. And it also kind of takes the Riddler and shows him in a different light. Because a lot of the time, the Riddler is just this wacky clown of a guy who talks in riddles and is dressed kind of weird. But in this film, he's a legitimate psychopath. Like I feel like they incorporated a lot more of the Joker in this guy than maybe other depictions of the Riddler, because he was a lot more serious. He still had all the riddles and all of that, but he was a lot more like a psychopathic murderer, which he actually is in this film, which I really liked. And I think the actor done a great job of showing that this man has some kind of mental disability or mental illness. Getting into some of the things I don't like now, and I'm not the biggest Batman fan in general. I will say that first and foremost. I'm more of a Marvel guy than a DC guy, but there's very little lore on Bruce Wayne in this film. Like a lot of the other Batman films I've seen, they go a lot more into his background and it's more about Bruce Wayne. And you see a lot more Bruce Wayne than Batman in most of these films. In this film, it's literally all Batman and no Bruce Wayne. Man has there's no line. He's always on the Batman side. Even when he is Bruce Wayne and he hasn't got the costume on. Like, even in the scenes where he is Bruce Wayne, there's very little emotion shown. He's always very sort of stoic. I don't know if stoic's the right word, but he's always very sort of depressed and aloof. He always seems to be in the mind of Batman, not in the mind of Bruce Wayne. And in other films, Bruce Wayne is portrayed as sort of this playboy billionaire with a lot of charisma and stuff like that. In this version, he definitely isn't that. That kind of sets the tone of the whole depressing film. Like I said at the start, another thing about this film, this isn't really a bad thing. It's just that this film was very, very long. It's like 3 hours long, bro. Like this is like a epic movie in terms of length. You think of long movies like The Irishman, The Godfather, stuff like that. It's kind of on par with length of that, and it does feel like it's very long. I mean, I don't think I got bored during it, but I was kind of like, could they speed up the story? There was a few kind of side story arcs that you're like, does that really need to be in it? While it's long, it's still pretty enjoyable throughout. Catwoman is the one character that did kind of was kind of cringe at times. I will say that. I think she done a good job in most of that, but throughout most of the film, she was good. But like, there was just some times I was like, bro, this character's kind of cringy. Some of the lines they come up with are just kind of just like, bro. Like, there's a whole thing alluding to Batman being a white, privileged, rich boy, which technically I guess he is. But it was just kind of like, why? Because at that point, and this is the next gripe, which is kind of a spoiler, but not really. Because I feel like Batman and Catwoman are in a relationship in the actual law, but like she literally suddenly falls in love with this man after like 2 minutes, bruv. Like 2 minutes, like one day they're just strangers, and then like the next day they meet. Like this woman is loving him all of a sudden. It makes no sense. It's like their relationship went from 0 to 100. She doesn't even know who he is. He never told her who he is. She doesn't know the real identity of him or anything. And it's just like, yep, that happened. And I was kind of like, why was it so rushed? Was there any need for that? It's kind of weird. I guess they just wanted a love interest in the film. I don't know. That made it very weird for me. Another thing is, like I mentioned earlier, with Batman's morals in this film, my man, like I said, he high roads people and stuff like that, but he's also very suggestible. Like someone tells him something and he seems to believe it. And then there's this one big revelation in the film where they tell him something and then he goes and speaks to another guy and he tells him something else and then it flips on his head. So he went from believing one guy and then the next scene it throws out this massive revelation and then he starts believing the other guy. And it's just kind of like, okay, was there any need to do that? Could you not have at least stretched out the tension of that first revelation a little bit more? And one last thing I want to talk about is I think a lot of people will compare this film to Spider-Man because Spider-Man and Batman probably the two most famous or popular superheroes. And a Spider-Man film literally came out, what, 3 months ago? 2 months ago now, however long it's been. And that Spider-Man film was really good. And if you're going to compare these two, like I said, they're two very different kinds of movie. One's a more depressing, serious movie, whereas one's more of a comedy action movie. And personally, I enjoyed Spider-Man way more than this movie. I won't even lie. I think it's unfair to compare them in that respect. I feel like if you like the Marvel type of movie and you're more into that type of superhero movie, you're not more into the more serious type of superhero movie, you might not like this. And if you're comparing both, then you're definitely probably going to say Spider-Man is better unless you're just a massive Batman and DC fan. I feel like a lot of complaints will come about that comparison. Maybe that's just my personal opinion, but on a rating scale of 100, I'm going to give this one a 75. Honestly, a 75 out of 100 is like a solid B+, you know. Good film, I enjoyed it. Great characters, had a decent story, but it wasn't perfect. Like I said, when I compare it to other films, but it has its place, it's still a good film. I think they put a nice building block to build on for a sequel, and I think they will come out with a sequel. I think this series could be very good if they continue this. I think they laid a great first building block. But yeah, that's about it. I'll see you all next time.